الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل والأنبياء ماحي الذنوب والخطاء منبع الجود والكرم والعطاء الذي دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أولي الصدق والصفاء. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. صدق الله العظيم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في شان حبيبه مخبرا وآمرا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وأصحاب سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رحمة للعالمين وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا شفيع المذنبين. نگاہ لطف کے یا رسول اللہ یا حبیب اللہ نگاہ لطف کے امیدوار ہم بھی ہیں لیے ہوئے یہ دل بے قرار ہم بھی ہیں لیے ہوئے یہ دل بے قرار ہم بھی ہیں. کھلا دو چائے دل صدقہ باد دامن کا کھلا دو صدقہ باد دامن کا امیدوار نسیم بہار ہم بھی ہیں امیدوار نسیم بہار ہم بھی نگاہ کرم میں سب کچھ ہے، تمہاری ایک نگاہ کرم میں سب کچھ ہے، پڑے ہوئے تو سرے راہ گزار ہم بھی ہیں، نگاہ لطف کے امیدوار ہم بھی ہیں، جو سر پہ رکھنے کو مل جائے نال پاک حضور، تو پھر کہیں گے کہ ہاں تاجدار ہم بھی ہیں، تو پھر کہیں گے کہ ہاں تاجدار ہم بھی ہیں۔ حسن ہے جن کی سخاوت کی دھوم عالم میں، انہی کے تم بھی ہو ایک ریزہ خار ہم بھی ہیں، نگاہ لطف کے امیدوار ہم بھی ہیں۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ Respectful audience, Alhamdulillah Ta'ala, it is truly with the tawfiq and the blessing of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that we are gathered in one of His blessed homes, this blessed and beautiful house of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, in a gathering to learn about the value of knowledge. And truly, this is a most blessed venture. I'd like to begin by extending my heartfelt congratulations and also my gratitude to the Al-Nasiha team for organizing this event and for all the other work that they are doing in terms of the magazine and the other events that I've seen and heard of. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept these efforts from them and reward them abundantly and grant them a lifetime of service of His deen and service of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The topic at hand, I'm going to get straight into it. The topic at hand is a very vast topic, and alhamdulillah I can see a very wide spectrum of ages in my audience, so it's going to be difficult to cater for every single person here from the ages that are here. But I will try to leave everybody, whatever the age group, with something or other to think about and to contemplate. And the fact of the matter is that the teachings of the Quran, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, they begin and end with knowledge and ilm, which is why the verse that I recited in front of you, I'm sure you've heard this many a time, with reference to knowledge, that this is the first verse that was revealed of the Quran al-Majid, and the first word of the Quran al-Majid that was revealed in this first revelation is Iqra, which means read. And this is something that requires knowledge. And in addition to that, the Prophet ﷺ, when talking about his responsibilities, and also the Quran, when it talks about the responsibilities of prophethood, the first and foremost is ta'aleem. It's teaching. And then there's tazkiyah, purification, and then there's other things. But right at the very top of that list is ta'aleem. It's education. The Prophet ﷺ himself, he said, بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا, I was sent as a teacher. There's many other words that the Prophet ﷺ could have used to describe himself, but he chose to describe himself as a teacher. He could have described himself in many beautiful words, and all of them which are true for the Prophet ﷺ. A leader, a guide, and many other words, but the Prophet ﷺ chose the word teacher, which again signifies the importance of knowledge and of education in Islam. And right from the outset, I just want to say to you that knowledge essentially can be divided into two different categories. You have that knowledge which is beneficial, which is nafi', which benefits people, which benefits the one who studies and seeks that knowledge, and then through that knowledge he's able to benefit others. And then you have knowledge which is detrimental, which is not beneficial, which is knowledge that perhaps will harm that individual himself, and through it will cause harm to others. And as a Muslim, the teachings of Islam venerate, they honor every type of beneficial knowledge. So today's discussion is not entirely related around knowledge of the deen. And although we will come to that shortly, if you look at other types of knowledge, or another division of the different types of knowledge, so one division was beneficial and harmful or non-beneficial. Another division of different types of knowledge is that knowledge which is compulsory upon every person as an individual, male or female, and then you have knowledge which is obligatory, is an obligation upon the community as a whole. And again, this is something that we'll look at. In terms of right from the outset, that knowledge which is fardul ayn, which is obligatory upon every single person as an individual, which is necessary for every individual to attain, that is knowledge of the deen, to an extent where you are able to distinguish between halal and haram, where you are able to distinguish between that which you should and shouldn't be doing. It is sufficient knowledge that allows you to conduct your religious obligations, your fara'id, completely. And so, for example, prayer and salah is an individual obligation upon every single Muslim, male and female. And so every single Muslim is obligated to have sufficient knowledge in order to be able to complete this fard and this obligation of salah. That amount of knowledge is essential, it's necessary. But this is not only related to, often when you say, for example, if I go back to my statement that knowledge and fardul ayn, knowledge which every single person must have for himself as an individual, is that which allows you to distinguish between halal and haram. We often think that halal and haram is just associated with edibles, with consumables, with things that we eat and drink. We don't go beyond that. We don't think that there are things that you could be looking at which could either be permissible for you to look at, they could be mubah or halal, or they could be haram. Things you could be listening to. And everything that you're doing could fall into that category. And so, you need a certain level of knowledge to live your life as a Muslim and to fulfill your religious obligations. This is absolutely mandatory, this is necessary. And in terms of education, one of the things that needs to be done, and this needs to be done as a matter of urgency, is that we have ample opportunity within our organizations to impart this knowledge to the children that are sat here in front of us within our madaris, within our masajid. If a child comes into, and I hope that there's somebody from the management of this institute here as well who's present, because I hope and pray that this responsibility is being fulfilled already, and I want to clarify this because it's going on record. Alhamdulillah, I've come here for the first time, and it's a beautiful establishment, and I hope and pray that everything that's happening here is just as beautiful. I'm not in any way making any kind of an insinuation, but this is more in terms of advice, and perhaps it may be beneficial. Perhaps already you have things in place that are actually catering for these needs. So it's not criticism, it's advice. And I just wanted to make that clear because it's not an institute that I'm familiar with, it's the first time that I'm coming here. But as a general topic of discussion, and something that perhaps may be published later for others to view as well, this is something that I have to say, because looking at so many institutes out there, unfortunately, we are not providing at the level that these children need to be provided for. Alhamdulillah, we've managed to make a great deal of progress. We've come away from a lot of things that were detrimental to the learning environment that children thrive in. And alhamdulillah, many of our institutes are looking, if they don't already have, they are looking to provide for teachers who speak English, as a native language speaker, or at least with the greatest fluency. And that's become a priority. This was something that was perhaps was problematic, because one of the most common criticisms that you find around the madrasa system, if you go 1 or 2 generations back, the biggest criticism you will find is that we did not understand the language of our teachers, our asatiza. And so, what can you impart to children that you're not able to converse with? So alhamdulillah, this is something that's being remedied and being rectified in many places. But at the same time, we need to realize what environment our children actually learn in and thrive in. And living in the UK, in Britain, our children spend a large portion of their day, a large chunk of their day in school. We need to provide a system that parallels the learning environment that they are accustomed to in the school. Until we don't do that, the children will not enjoy their time in madrasa. Now, if there's any parents here, you will probably relate to this. That have you ever had difficulty in terms of, your children going to school, especially the younger children in the earlier primary stage of school, not many parents have difficulty in sending their children to school. The children are more than happy to go to school. They're happy to get up in the morning. In the holidays sometimes, towards the end of the holidays, they start looking forward to going back to school. Can you say the same thing for them going to masjid and madrasa in the evening? If you can't, then there's something there that we need to address. The children should be wanting to go to madrasa. They should not be forced into it. They should not be made to go. They should be wanting to go. This is based upon the learning environment, largely on the learning environment that you provide for those children. Now, you can teach those children seerah. You can teach them in a traditional setup, in a traditional manner where you can lecture them, or you can use other resources that are now available. You can make it interactive for them, and you can actually provide an interactive learning environment. And at the younger ages, you can actually provide an environment for them where they are learning through play, because this is what they're accustomed to, this is what they enjoy. So we need to start thinking along those lines. Let me just propose something, put something out there. I don't know what the timings are for classes here, but in most madaris, most masajid that I'm familiar with, some of them have come down now to 1 hour sessions. There are still places where children are attending masjid in the evening for 2 hours on a daily basis for at least 5 days. That's 10 hours of learning a week. 10 hours of learning a week. And there's 52 weeks in a year, let's give or take some holidays and so on. 50 round numbers, we work with round figures to make it easier. 50 weeks and 10 hours of learning. That's 500 hours of learning. And over what period? Children come at the age of 5. Many of them will actually stay till the age of about 15. And that's the age when they start getting into their GCSEs and so on, and they start leaving the masajid. 10 years, times that by 10 again. 5,000 learning hours those children have spent in the masjid. And if at the end of those 5,000 learning hours, that child who's leaving at the age of 15 does not even know how to pray salah correctly. And when I say correctly, I don't mean go through the motions. I mean, he doesn't know what the fara'id of salah are. He doesn't know what the wajibat and the sunan, the mustahabbat, the makruhat of the prayer are. Then it's a shame. Why is it that after spending this amount of time, this is something that we need to look at as a community. Now, this is not a criticism of any particular organization or a particular group of people. But as a community, we have this responsibility to understand that if our children are spending this much time in the madaris, then they should be leaving with something. And I think the biggest step towards this, 2 things: provide a learning environment which the children enjoy and they thrive. And number 2, have a steady syllabus where the children are actually learning and progressing. It's not a matter of going round in circles for 10 years. They're actually learning and progressing and move on. Children thrive with this competition. And everyone, not just the children, you and I, all of us, we like to have a sense of accomplishment when we do something. We like to have a sense of progress when we do something. And so this is something that we seriously need to consider. And alhamdulillah, some of the meetings that I've attended recently, there is talk of a unified syllabus being made and introduced to the masajid within the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah from the platform of, the recently revived platform of the British Muslim Forum. And I hope that this is something that goes ahead, because it's a dire need. of the time today. It's a huge waste of resources and time. If after 5,000 learning hours, our children come away simply knowing how to recite the Quran by looking at it, and even then, whether they're reciting 100% accurately or not, that's something to be assessed. That's one thing. This is the stage when we talk about those fard ulum, those ulum which are fardul ayn upon an obligation upon every person. This is the platform where they need to be provided. Now, I'm not saying that within those 10 years, every single child that leaves from every single institute should be an alim. That's a long shot, and it's a difficult task. But in the very least, every single child that after those 10 years leaves from every masjid and madrasa of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah should at least be secure as a Muslim, know his shari, his religious responsibilities, and also his civic responsibilities within the community that he lives in, so that he is then an upstanding British Muslim when he leaves that masjid in that time. This is the need of the time. We need to assess this need. When we talk about education, this is where education begins. If I go beyond that, then we're looking at the other side of the picture. What are those children doing? Yes, they're spending certain amounts of time in school, small amount of time in madrasa each day. Where are they spending the rest of that time? The rest of the time is being spent at home. And parents have a huge responsibility. Again, if I go down that line, then the fard ulum should actually be taught by the parents. Which is very difficult when we're living in a time where many of the parents won't themselves have access to that knowledge. They won't have that knowledge. And so we live in a time, education is the answer to many of our problems. Whether they're based on the community, whether they are communal problems, or whether they are problems of a different nature, the answer is education. The key is education. It needs to be provided in our masajid, in our madaris, but also within our homes as well. One of the key aspects of ta'aleem, something that goes hand in hand, without which knowledge and education can often be not only useless, it can become detrimental, and that is tarbiyah. It's the environment that children are given. It's a nurturing that they're given. As well as educating, they need nurturing. Who's going to provide this nurturing environment? That's the responsibility of the parents to provide that within the home. If you look at prophetic manners of teaching, the first thing that is part of these, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Bu'ithtu mu'alliman," I've been sent as a teacher. The first part of those prophetic manners of teaching is for a teacher to lead by example. How many parents can actually say that they do that they lead by example? When you lead by example, it actually helps you and it alleviates a lot of the burden of teaching. It helps you to actually provide that tutoring through an example. And, this is methods of teaching. There's so much to say, and so, relatively speaking, I'm not complaining that I don't have enough time. There's plenty of time, but relatively speaking, it's such a vast topic that I don't know what to pick on and what to address. There's so many different issues. But in terms of methods of delivering and of teaching, that learning environment that needs to be provided, just one hadith comes to mind, and I'll leave it at that. You can draw your own conclusions, and then perhaps on another occasion we can look at the prophetic manners of teaching, how the Prophet ﷺ taught different people, different manners for different people of different ages and different backgrounds. One hadith about a child eating in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and his hands are wandering around the plate. What does the Prophet ﷺ do? Doesn't slap him on the hand, doesn't say, "Oi, so and so, what you doing? Shouldn't be eating like this." Doesn't use the normal address that many parents would use. The Prophet ﷺ addressed him most affectionately and said, Ya ghulam, my son, O child, Sambillah, take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa kul biyaminik, eat with your right hand and eat from in front of you. Very affectionately, the Prophet ﷺ not only tells him what to do, but shows him practically how to do it. Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala, nurtured by the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years, a whole decade in Medina, given in the service of the Prophet ﷺ as a child, as a young boy. And he says the Prophet ﷺ never once said to me, why did you do this or why didn't you do this? As parents, you might ask them, how do you discipline your children if you're never to even say to them, why did you do this and why didn't you do this? Lead by example. And then don't ask them why. Tell them, teach them, explain to them, show them practically and verbally what they need to do and how they need to do it. This is how to interact with children. And so that's the aspect of the younger children to one side. Get a bit, going to one side from that. These same children, we've talked about the madrasa. What about the school? Now that's equally as important. And just to highlight that, that fact, just some of the remarkable contributions, and the youngsters here, and in particular those who are, especially, if you're in secondary school or college or university, this is something that you really need to listen to carefully, and everybody else as well, in terms of the contributions that the Muslims have made to the modern world. If you look at the field of medicine, of surgery, approximately 1,000, around the year 1,000, you had a doctor, Al-Zahrawi, this is we're looking at over 1,000 years ago. And he published a 1,500-page illustrated encyclopedia of surgery, which formed the basis of scientific medical knowledge for the next 500 years. And he's known as the father of modern medicine. Ibn Farnas, it's known as the first person to make a real attempt at constructing a flying machine. Another Muslim. The first university and the longest standing university that has been running consecutively without a break started in the year 859 by a woman. In a modern society where the role of women is questioned in Islam. And in some circles you even still have this ridiculous discussion as to whether women should be educated or not. This remarkable lady established the first, Fatima al-Fihri, founded the great university of Fez in Morocco. If you've studied any mathematics at all, if you've studied any algebra, then you are indebted to Al-Khwarizmi, the Muslim mathematician, who changed the face of mathematics and the way that we deal with numbers in the world. These are most remarkable contributions. These are things that have changed the way the world we see today. If these did not exist, the world we know today would be very, very different. These are remarkable contributions. Optics and cameras based around the works of Ibn al-Haytham. And a most remarkable feat of engineering, the development of the crank. If you know anything about engineering, you will know that everything, all modern robotics and engineering equipment that use the crankshaft and use the crank, these would not be in existence today if it wasn't for the contributions of Al-Jazari, a Muslim scientist. We often forget about this, sometimes because this is not relevantly highlighted in the media. Many a time we will find that parallels have been set up in terms of non-Muslims who've made similar contributions, but they've been highlighted and the Muslim contributions have been put aside. But this is something that you need to study and you need to learn from. Why is it that over the past 300-400 years we don't have any of these kind of contributions from the Muslim community? Without these contributions, the world as we know it today would not exist as it is. But yet we don't have any of these contributions over the past 300 or 400 years. Now, these were not superhuman people. So one thing I will say to you, and this is my advice to anybody who's in school and who wishes to excel in their education at school. We as Muslims, this thing about secular and religious education, this has only been introduced very recently into Islam. As Muslims, we view knowledge as being of two types, beneficial and harmful. We stay away from that which cause harm to others, and we embrace everything and anything in terms of knowledge that could be useful and beneficial to all. The purpose of our seeking that knowledge used to be for the sake of learning and seeking knowledge. When it came to religious knowledge, the first and foremost purpose was to rectify your own self. Once you've completed that, then to preach to others. The purpose of other knowledge was to benefit the rest of the community. The purpose was to further the field of science and the field of knowledge. We've stopped doing this. One thing I will say to you is when it comes to your making up your mind, we could ask some of the youngsters here what they plan to be when they grow up. But running out of time, I'm just going to move on. But just something for you to think about. I'm sure you've all got something in your mind that you want to be when you grow up. What's the purpose behind that? I'm sure some of you are thinking about becoming doctors or engineers or whatever it is you want to do. What's the purpose behind that? And when you get to the stage where you're choosing your subject for your degree, what will you be looking at? I've noticed over the years trends develop. Right? There was a time when people were running headlong into medicine, then into law. Right? Anyone and everyone was studying law. Why? Because they want to become a lawyer and a barrister and so on. Pharmacy's taken off hugely in the past few years. I've noticed it as a trend. Many of my students, I see these patterns within my students. Many of them, large chunk of them, are pharmacists. What was the purpose behind that? Is it just that you're going to get a secure job? Is it just that you're going to earn that money? Remember that the ulama have said you can do something good. And in fact, it may be a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but I don't want to attribute without certainty to the Prophet ﷺ. But it is, whether it's a hadith or statement of the ulama, it's advice. And the advice is that you could do something good. Something on the exterior which seems good. But if the intention is not good, your action will not be good. So you could do something which looks like it's an action that belongs in the akhirah, that it's going to benefit you in the hereafter. But it won't, because your intention is not there. And you could do something that looks like it belongs to the dunya, just like becoming a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer or whatever you want to be. On the exterior it appears like it is an act of the dunya, but it will benefit you in the akhirah if you have the right intention. What should that intention be? The intention should not be for you to earn money. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Raziq. He will provide for you, and every single grain that you're going to consume has already been recorded by Him. So
Don't make that your motivation. Your motivation should not be the money. Your motivation should be to make yourself a better person, to make yourself somebody who can contribute to the society, to become become a member of the society that actually is giving back to and contributing to the society that you live in. And then perhaps the knowledge that you acquire will benefit you in the akhirah, even if it's knowledge of the dunya. And so, those people, remember, and this goes for trades as well. Knowledge includes trades. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say, Al-Qasimu Habibullah? Someone who earns with his hands is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Because he's not relying on others. He's using his own resources to provide for himself. And if he does so, while embracing his religious responsibilities, that person is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, you need to strike a balance between your efforts for the dunya and for the akhirah. But at the same time, knowledge of the deen and in detail and in-depth knowledge of the deen. This is an obligation on the entire community. One of the problems that we're facing in the community today, why is it that we have hundreds of masajid and yet we're struggling to find native English-speaking ai*imma to work in those masajid? There's many factors here, but one of the factors is that we've not given the priority to the knowledge of the deen that we should have done. We've prioritized knowledge of the dunya for the wrong reasons, to earn money, not to actually benefit society. And we've not prioritized the knowledge of the deen, which our survival as a religion, as a community is dependent upon. How many people out there, how many young people out there will by choice will take the path of deen? They will forsake the path of dunya and take the path of deen. Going back to that same point again, Razikh is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And perhaps this was taking and choosing this path may have been one of the most difficult, but one of the best decisions of my life. Now, I look at those around me, many of my friends, they are practicing now as solicitors, as doctors, as lawyers, and so on. But I never look back at my decision, because truly this is something that happens with the choice and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as with everything. But this specific, these are the knowledge of the path of deen is such that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever walks the path of the deen, of acquiring the knowledge of the deen, Allah will make the path of Jannah easy for him. These are people for whom, insects in the ground, fish in the sea and the rivers, they pray for their protection, for their being preserved, for their preservation. This is the path of the deen. And so, knowledge and education, this is something that we need to address, we need to embrace. There's different levels, just to conclude and to finish off. There's different levels of knowledge. And when we look at it, we have different, we have different demographics that we need to provide for within our community. When it comes to, I've mentioned English-speaking ulama, how many muallimas have we provided in the time that we've been here? That's perhaps an even bigger question mark. And so, to finish this divide between male and female, to provide adequately for both of them, and to make adequate provisions. If we don't have this 20 years from now, where will we be? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, one of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that knowledge will be lifted. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, one of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that knowledge will be lifted. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that knowledge will not be lifted by taking it and seizing it from the hearts of the ulama. It's not that somebody will be an alim one day and he will go to sleep and wake up a non-alim. Knowledge will be seized because the ulama will pass on. and there will be no one to replace them. This is something that we're forgetting now. We're here where we are in 10 years' time. If we don't make these provisions, where will we be then? So these are issues that need to be, dealt with. These are issues that we need to be concerned with. When it comes to education, whether it's religious or whether it's education at school, at college, university, whether it's education at the home. Remember, education is nothing without nurturing, without tarbiyah, without the morals and the akhlaq that are required to be instilled within that person. And this is why we need to understand who we're seeking our knowledge from. Something that I would have liked to have addressed possibly is also the etiquettes of learning. When we have that mindset, I've already mentioned to you what the intention should be. With religious knowledge, it's to benefit ourselves first of all, to rectify ourselves, and then to actually benefit others. With secular knowledge or other scientific knowledge and so on, all of that should be done with the intention of giving back to the communities that we're in. Our Razik is Allah, He will provide for us. And so I hope that this short discussion provided you with something to think about. Whether it's our masajid, we need to work there, whether it's our madaris, whether it's our homes, whether it's our schools. There's a lot of question marks that need to be answered. They need to be removed. And we need to work together as a community to actually take on that responsibility. Knowledge is most virtuous. Remember the value of knowledge. Understand that from this statement of the Prophet ﷺ, "Bu'ithtu mu'alliman," I've been sent as a teacher. If Allah wished, He could have revealed the Quran in book form, sent it down and told us to read it and understand it and act upon it. He didn't need to send a teacher with it. So that's something for us to think about, the way the Prophet ﷺ nurtured his Sahaba. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq and ability to understand, value all types of beneficial knowledge, and for us to all learn knowledge to benefit ourselves and then be able to benefit others through our knowledge. Jazakallah. Thank you for listening. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. It's not very inquisitive. Either I'm brilliant or, either it's all sunk in on